March 2014, University of Freiburg. A hall filled with silence and history. Namibian officials, traditional leaders, German academics. They don't just gather for a ceremony. They gather for a reckoning. At the center, a long table, covered in white linen. On it, wooden crates, sealed, stamped with Namibia's coat of arms. No one speaks. Then, a man from Germany steps forward, a representative of the university. He places his hands gently on the crate. Across from him, a Namibian elder, silent, steady. Their eyes meet, no words exchanged, only a quiet handover. History crossing borders. What's inside the box? Inside, a skull. Stained by time, labeled by science, but human. This is not just a return, it is an acknowledgement of violence, of memory, of truth. They were taken in death. Now, they return in honor. How did these skulls end up in German laboratories? Who stole them from the dead? And why did it take over a century to bring them home? In 1883, a German tobacco merchant named Adolf Hitler set sail from Bremen, driven not only by profit but by ambition, for land, for empire. With political backing from Berlin and a dream of colonial grandeur, Luderitz arrived on the southwest coast of Africa. There, he struck a deal with local chiefs for control of a coastal stretch known as Angra Pequena. The contract was written in German, and the measurements, geographical miles, were deliberately vague. The chiefs, unaware of what they had signed, had in fact ceded vast tracts of land. That same area was soon renamed Luderitz Bay in his honor. By 1884, news of Luderitz's success had reached Kaiser Wilhelm I, Emperor of the German Empire. His chancellor at the time, Otto von Bismarck, had long resisted colonial expansion. But a shift was underway. Germany had arrived late to the imperial race. Britain, France, and Belgium were already carving up Africa. The Kaiser saw opportunity: land, resources, global standing. So, on August 24, 1884, Germany declared the region a protectorate, christening it German Southwest Africa. The machinery of empire began to grind forward. Soon came soldiers, missionaries, traders, and settlers. They disembarked at Luderitz Bay and fanned out inland, cloaked in the language of civilization. But what followed was conquest, forced labor, and land seizure. One of the region's most powerful indigenous leaders was Chief Samuel Maharero of the Herero people, a literate, politically astute figure who initially attempted diplomacy with the German colonial government. But treaties were broken, grazing lands seized, and cattle stolen. The Herero watched their world disappear beneath foreign boots and barbed wire. In 1904, the Herero revolted. Under Maharero's leadership, they launched a defiant guerrilla uprising. Germany responded with cold, bureaucratic cruelty. In August 1904, Chancellor Bernhard von Bülow, then head of the German imperial government, ordered a crackdown. The empire deployed General Lothar von Trotha, a man infamous for his ruthlessness. Upon his arrival, von Trotha issued a chilling proclamation.
Every Herero found within the German borders, armed or unarmed, with or without cattle, shall be shot.
This was the Vernichtungsbefehl, the extermination order. Driven into the Omaheki Desert, the Herero were hunted, starved, and left to die. Thousands perished under the sun. Those who survived the trek were not spared. They were rounded up and confined to the first German concentration camps. Among these camps, none was more feared than Shark Island, just off the coast of Luderitz. Constructed by colonial governor Theodor Leutwein and later operated under General von Trotha, the camp was enclosed with barbed wire and guarded by soldiers. It lacked basic necessities: food, medicine, sanitation. It was a place designed for slow death. Men, women, and children were subjected to grueling forced labor, breaking rocks, hauling stones, building railroads for German profit. Those who collapsed were beaten or simply left to die. But the camp's true horror came not just from cruelty, but from scientific interest. News of Shark Island's availability of human material reached academic circles in Germany. Letters were exchanged, requests were made. One came from a rising figure in racial science, Dr. Eugen Fischer, a young anatomist from the University of Freiburg. Fascinated by racial mixing and skull structure, Fischer believed Africans were biologically inferior, and he intended to prove it. In 1908, Fischer traveled to German Southwest Africa. He visited camps like Shark Island and Swakopmund, photographing survivors, measuring their skulls, drawing blood. His pretext was science. His methods blurred the line between research and inhumanity. Soon, the dead became subjects too. Fischer began collecting skulls of deceased prisoners, numbering over 778 by some estimates. The remains were cleaned, labeled, and boxed in crates, often with handwritten notes identifying the age, gender, and tribal origin. These crates were shipped via Lüderitz or Swakopmund, loaded onto vessels bound for Hamburg, then transported by rail to German institutions in Berlin, Freiburg, and Munich. There, behind the locked doors of universities and research centers, including the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, Fischer and his students analyzed the remains. They measured cranial angles, jawlines, and nasal widths. The results were published in papers and textbooks that codified pseudoscientific theories of racial hierarchy. Fischer's research claimed Africans were mentally and biologically inferior to Europeans. These ideas did not remain confined to academia. They bled into German policy, and decades later, they were resurrected by the Nazi regime. One of Fischer's most devoted protégés was Joseph Mengele, the SS doctor who became notorious for human experimentation in Auschwitz. Mengele carried Fischer's racial ideology from the lecture halls of Freiburg into the gas chambers of Nazi Germany. This was the foundation of Nazi racial science. Its roots reached not only to the 1930s Germany, but to the 1900s Namibia, to Shark Island, to Eugen Fischer, to the skulls that crossed the ocean. For nearly a century, those skulls sat on shelves, silent witnesses to atrocity. But silence began to break around 2008, when researchers confirmed that more than 40 skulls from Herero and Nama victims were still held in German collections. Then a reckoning began. In October 2011, Germany returned 20 skulls to Namibia, acknowledging for the first time the colonial atrocities committed in its name. In March 2014, the University of Freiburg formally repatriated 14 more skulls in a ceremony attended by Namibian officials, including Minister Jerry Ekenjo, as well as tribal leaders and German dignitaries. Each crate bore the Namibian coat of arms. Inside them were ancestors, finally returning home. But questions linger. Who gave Fischer permission to take those remains? How many skulls are still missing? What restitution is possible when science becomes a tool of empire? And human lives, its instruments? This is the legacy of German Southwest Africa. A legacy of conquest, of genocide, of skulls that crossed oceans and came back bearing truth.